Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, welcome to another CW webinar. I'm Wanderson and me and my team are here to bring you the main highlights of the first Q 2022 trade price report update. For today's presentation, I would like to introduce myself, Wanderson Teixeira, business analyst at CW Group, as well as my colleague Vasco Teixeira, who's also a business analyst at CW Group and the lead analyst of this report. Both of us are based in Portugal. On today's agenda, we will start with an introduction of our company, what it is that we do, and what we have to offer, and of course, share the main highlights of this new report update, including an overview of the methodology, the macroeconomic overview, shipping and energy overview, and then diving deep into our domestic and trade prices study. I'm going to ask you to please bear here with me while I give you a brief introduction of what is that our company do. CW is present across three distinct verticals, which are the advisory, research, and media. Under the advisory, CW works with major global consultancies and leading institutions, including the World Bank and funds and projects. We provide consulting and advisory expertise on a diverse product portfolio. Our recent projects involved not only a study on the West African circular economy and its impact in major industries, including the construction and building materials, but also other topics, including studies in the MENA and West Africa regions. Under the research umbrella, CW focus on global cement demand as well as detailed industry and country reports. We provide historical and forecast for markets in a variety of products. This includes not only the trade prices report, which we are going to discuss today, but also the VFR, which is the volume forecast report, the white cement report, and many others. We also provide commodity price assessments for cement, clinker, as well as pet coke and coal. And last but not least, we have the media umbrella, where you can have an online access to our vast database. You can subscribe to our various newsletters for topics of interest, including cement, building materials, paper and pulp, pet coke, bulk, and coal. And under this section, this sector, we also have some industry-specific meetings. We have started to hold them in person again, and our next meeting for the Slag and Ash Trade 2022 will take place in Cologne, Germany on the 18th and 19th of May. So if you are interested, please don't hesitate to contact us for more information on it. So without further ado, let us dive into today's presentation, CW's research first quarter update of the trade prices report. This report is a quarterly updated report focused on providing a comprehensive quantitative and qualitative analysis on trade of cementitious products. We include details insights on gray cement, white cement, clinker, and granulated slag. Of course, it's always our endeavor to continue to expand our coverage of cement trade prices, especially in Africa. Our statistical model that is used for this report is updated twice a year, the second and fourth Q. And as of now, the report covers around 86% of the global trade for these products. And other details regarding an individual and corporate subscriptions are also available in the link that you find below in this slide. Although coverage for most of the regions is comprehensive in the sense that at least one or more factors are tracked, our major focus is to continue to increase our coverage of major African markets. This, of course, depends on the consistency of official data sources that we have available. Now, to finally start off, we're going to present the global economic prospects for 2022. In this slide, you can see that we have a chart here showing the global economic outlook provided by the IMF early in the beginning of the year, Goldman Sachs and S&P Global more recently in March. According to the IMF's January update, the global economic witnessed a recovery in 2021 of around 5.9%. For 2022, the global economic growth was estimated at 3.8%. However, as of now, this economic outlook does not represent the actual economic scenario that we're facing, as the world has been changing drastically due to a series of geopolitical events, mostly the Russia Ukraine conflict. More recently, at the beginning of March, Goldman Sachs released its economic outlook, revising downward the global growth to 3.4% this year. This revision was mostly due to the Russia Ukraine conflict, which is expected to exacerbate the supply demand imbalance and surging inflation rates. However, in the second half of the year, Goldman Sachs believes that improvements in goods and labor supply combined with tighter money policy will be sufficient to bring inflation back to near developed market central banks' targets over the next 2 years. Regarding this ongoing conflict, Goldman Sachs also expects that the global impacts are going to be sizable, with Europe and other commodity importing countries being the most affected regions. This is because of the surging inflation from the sharp increase in commodity prices, as we have seen for the past couple of weeks. On the other hand, we have S&P Global, which expects the global economy to grow by 3.3% in its latest report. This was revised also downwards from 4.1% due to the sharp contractions in Russia and Ukraine and Western Europe, which is seeing a surge in prices of natural gas, oil, and electricity. According to them, almost all regions are expected to be affected by the war-related supply disruption, with the exception of the Middle East and North Africa, where we have oil and gas exporters that are likely to benefit from higher energy prices. Of course, we cannot talk about the global economic outlook without mentioning the recent geopolitical events that we have been facing for the past couple of months, taking place in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. On one side, first we have the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which started in late February, being in by far one of the worst conflicts on European soil since the World War II. The economic impacts of this conflict have already negatively changed the global economy. For instance, the Russian economy has been beaten by Western sanctions, including the freezing of Russian central bank assets, targeting of wealthy Russian individuals and some state-owned banks, partial access restriction to the international payment system, the SWIFT, and also a stop from Germany to its Russian gas pipeline project. The outcome of this conflict is already drastic, but whenever this ongoing conflict season ends, will be even more economically catastrophic for both Ukraine and Russia. Not even to count on the humanitarian crisis that we are already facing. Then we have other complex events, which include China's possible advance on Taiwan. China has been, for the past couple of months, displaying its military power via sea and air near the island, which is for sure raising further concerns in Taiwan. Additionally, we have the Iran nuclear agreement, which is still ongoing, and it's also raising concerns about its resolution in the short-term period, especially because of the U.S. fear of a possible scenario where Russia might be benefited from the deal. Now, considering the recent events, it's impossible for us to have a better understanding of trade prices, especially for cementitious products, without having a deeper look at the main sea freight rates and container freight rates. So, in this next slide, we can see the trend of the Baltic Dry Index and Container Freight Index, mostly known as Freighter Baltic Index. In terms of the BDI, which tracks rates for ships carrying dry bulk commodities, especially cement, as of March 23rd, is settled at 2,575 points. This was mostly due to gains in Panamax and the Supramax segments that were enough to offset a dip in the Capesize rates. The Capesize rates and segment saw a steep fall in its Atlantic market activity amid the geopolitical tensions and its effects on trade. In addition to this, lockdowns imposed in China due to the resurgence of COVID-19 cases have also hit iron ore demand, and construction materials, including steel rebar and hot rolled coils that are used in the manufacturing sector, in the past week have already been trading higher amid supply concerns after Tang Shen implemented a temporary lockdown. In the short terms, freight rates are likely to see a change in its pattern due to a shift in trade pattern that is expected to happen due to the ongoing conflict, as usual traders are going to need to look for different sources of major commodities in the short-term period. In terms of the container freight rates, which, as I mentioned, is commonly known as the Freightos Baltic Index, we have seen a surge for the past couple of months, especially in the Asia West Coast US trade route, due to a series of factors. This includes the China Zero COVID strategy, which has been impacting economic activity, leading to further port congestions and delays in delivery of goods. This trend is expected to remain in the short-term period for two reasons. Most because container vessels are likely to have to be taken to dry docks to refit the IMO regulations, and also because we are seeing negotiations between the Pacific Maritime Association and the ILW, which are expected to happen later this year. And these negotiations, they could create an even bigger impact in terms of congestion times in West Coast ports if they are not, if an agreement is not actually reached by both sides. So overall, both rates are expected to continue to see an upward trend, either because of the effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is impacting drastically fuel prices, or also because of supply chain disruptions that are aggravating port congestions. In this next slide, we give you an overview of energy prices evolutions and also to show you and try to have a better understanding of what this is impacting in terms of production costs and transportation. Bunker fuel prices we're already seeing a surge in major trade routes, and this is being more aggravated by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which therefore leads to higher transportation costs, increasing the final price and trade pricing for major products, including cement. Also, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has also impacted coal and natural gas prices, increasing industrial production costs across the globe. More specifically, we are seeing this in Europe. And in terms of electricity prices, we are also seeing a surge in the beginning of the conflict, since the beginning of the conflict, right? Directly affecting the production of commodities. To be more specifically, in the case of the cement industry, we are seeing cement stoppages and reductions in a series of factories, more in Spain. For example, Cement Portland Valderrivas in mid-March announced the temporary closure of all kilns at its 7 plants due to the spike in energy prices. This measure, according to them, was taken by the company because they were not able to continue to have a viable production. And the company also reported that currently energy and fuel are representing 70% of production cost with this spike, while previously they only represented 35%. And also, we have not only them, but also many other cement manufacturers that are already reaching out to the Spanish government to address this electricity issue because it's affecting all of their production cycle. Along with Spain, we also have in Europe Portugal being one of the countries where the effect of the rise in price of natural gas on electricity increases most dramatically in line with the price of electricity itself. The short-term outcome for both fuel, natural gas, coal prices, and electricity prices is hard to predict as of now, and we will likely still see the effects of the ongoing conflict, even if it ends shortly for quite some time. Now, I would like to continue our webinar. Therefore, I'm going to pass the presentation to my colleague Vasco. So thank you once again for your time and your attention. There you go, Vasco.
Thank you, Anderson, and welcome again, everybody. I will now lead the presentation and we'll be providing some insights on the current market situation. But of course, the report includes a much more detailed analysis on what is happening and what to expect in the next quarter for both exworks and retail prices. So to begin with, exworks prices in the first quarter of 2022 are expected to see an increase in almost all regions with the exception of China. Chinese cement prices have been declining in the past couple of months due to constraints of downstream construction. For example, in January of this year, the average cement price declined by 8.7% month on month, and in February it declined 3.8%. And with that, on a quarterly basis, exworks prices are estimated to see a decline of more than 10% in the first quarter. Meanwhile, in the Mediterranean basin, Italy and Spain's exworks prices are expected to witness the biggest increase on a quarterly basis of more than 29 and 20% respectively. And this is due to the increase in production costs in both countries caused by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Italy is highly dependent on imports for electricity and gas, and therefore is being severely impacted by the conflict, given the fact that around 40% of its gas supply comes from Russia. And in Spain, cement producers are facing escalating energy prices, which is forcing them to take drastic measures like stopping some of their operations. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe and Seas region, it is expected to be heavily impacted by the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, with exworks prices set to increase by almost 9% quarter on quarter. Russia is expected to have the biggest exworks prices increase in the quarter because of economic sanctions imposed by several countries. And additionally, the country is facing building materials shortage, which is likely to add more pressure on the pricing. For instance, several producers have already mentioned that they will increase prices for their products by around 20–30% in the short-term period. And lastly, in Western Europe, Exworks prices are likely to see a surge of almost 7% quarter on quarter in the first quarter of this year, with all markets witnessing prices increase due to the rising energy prices, scarcity of raw materials, and delivery delays, which are negatively impacting the construction sector. So in this slide, we are presenting the cement exworks price variation on a yearly basis for the first quarter. On a yearly basis, exworks price variations are expected to range from a decrease of 10% in China to an increase of more than 16% in Eastern Europe. The Chinese economy has been witnessing a slowdown in its growth after increases from the first quarter to the third quarter of 2021. And in the fourth quarter of the year, China's GDP increased 4.0%, with GDP increasing by 8.1% throughout the full year. And this decrease is attributed to the COVID-19 resurgence, real estate downturn, and restraint of economic momentum. In terms of Eastern Europe, Russia exworks cement prices are estimated to have a yearly increase of more than 16%, and the situation was worsened due to the economic sanctions imposed by several countries on Russia, which are having an enormous impact on the Russian economy. And these sanctions have frozen large amounts of the country's foreign money, and many countries, including many companies and some cement companies like CRH and Holcim, have stopped operations in Russia. And lastly, in the United States, exworks prices for cement are forecast to increase 14% year on year in the first quarter of this year. In January of 2022, the value of construction put in place in the United States increased 1.3% compared to the previous month, while increasing 8.2% compared to the same period of last year. And in addition, the number of building permits increased by 0.8% year on year and 0.7% on a monthly basis just in January. So in order to better understand trade prices dynamics, and before we jump into the trade study, I would like to start by providing some country level insights when it comes to cement demand. So overall, all markets are witnessing a slowdown or a decrease in demand in the first months of 2022. In Morocco, cement demand increased year-to-date by 5.4% in February, showing a downward trajectory from the 8.8% growth in the previous month. And cement demand in Peru grew only by 1.1% in January, from a 39.8% growth in the full year of 2021. Lastly, in Chile, cement demand only grew year-to-date to 0.2% in February, from a 15.6% in the January to December period of 2021. All the other markets are witnessing decreasing demand. And for instance, Brazil cement sales decreased by 4% in the January to February period, year-to-date. And cement sales in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia decreased even further by 8% and 10% respectively during the same period from January to February. Lastly, Japan's cement sales have been declining since 2021, as in the year of 2021 sales decreased by 2.6% and are continuing to decrease by 1.9% in January. So now, in order to provide a context of the global market scenario, I'll present a volume analysis of trade of cementitious products in the fourth quarter of 2021. So firstly, and on a global level, gray cement volumes increased 2% quarter on quarter, while increasing almost 4% year on year. The Mediterranean Basin and Asia-Pacific Japan's were the regions that reported the biggest export volumes during the fourth quarter of 2021. And Turkey remains the largest exporter of gray and white cement in the fourth quarter. Globally, clinker cements saw an increase of 9%, also quarter on quarter, with Vietnam being the largest clinker exporter during the fourth quarter. And lastly, Japan remained the biggest slag exporter with a share of more than 45% of the total slag exports, followed by India and Germany. So now, in terms of the FOB average prices during the fourth quarter, gray cement prices are expected to witness an increase of slightly more than 2%, with South American prices increasing around 5% quarter on quarter, and the Scandinavia and Baltics region seeing the biggest price drop of around 5%. On a yearly basis, Asia-Pacific Japan FOB prices decreased slightly around 8%, and the region represented around 30% of the total global traded volume during the quarter. Now, in the first quarter of this year, global gray cements are expected to witness an increase of more than 4% compared to the fourth quarter of 2021, with the Mediterranean Basin and Eastern Europe experiencing the largest price increases. In terms of clinker prices in the fourth quarter, prices are expected to witness almost 1% on a month-on-month basis, with the Middle East and Eastern Europe experiencing also the largest price increases. In the first quarter of 2022, clinker prices are expected to also witness an increase of more than 3% compared to the previous quarter. And in both the Middle East and Eastern Europe, clinker prices are forecasted to increase by more than 6%. And lastly, when it comes to white cement, during the fourth quarter of 2021, prices also experienced an increase by almost 1%, with the Middle East and Mediterranean Basin increasing by around 2%. Globally, white cement volumes have also decreased by 5% quarter on quarter. In terms of the first quarter of this year, white cement is the product forecasted to witness the largest price increase at around 6%. The price increase is attributed to the ever-increasing inflation rates, added to the sharp increase in electricity, coal, and natural gas prices caused by the geopolitical conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And on top of that, white cement is also forecasted to have the largest price increase as it is transported in containers, which increases the shipment prices. And container quantities have been revised downwards. They used to be at 27 tons per 20 feet per container, and now they have been revised to 20 tons per 20 feet container, further pressuring white cement prices and volumes. So in this slide, we provide an overview of gray cement FOB price changes between our estimation of the prices for the first quarter of 2022 and our forecast for the second quarter of 2022. And globally, gray cement prices are forecasted to see a robust increase in the second quarter of this year as a result of the increase of production and transportation costs aggravated by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and the pandemic. Eastern Europe and the CIS region are forecasted to witness the biggest price increase as it is the epicenter of the geopolitical conflict. And it is followed by the Mediterranean Basin as around 40% of the region's natural gas and 27% of its oil comes from Russia, being that 30% are transported through Ukrainian territory. As mentioned before, in Spain, cement manufacturers have reached out to the government to communicate how electricity prices are impacting their production. And as of the beginning of March, Cimento Portland Valderia announced a temporary closure of all kilns at its 7 main plants in Spain due to the high energy prices. Lastly, in North America, prices are also estimated to increase, reaching more than $125 per ton. And in sub-Saharan Africa, FOB prices are set to reach around $100 per ton in the second quarter of 2022. Now, I would like to end the webinar with the closing remarks of our report. And please note that we have focused on the highlights of this update. And you can find much more detailed information in the report. So firstly, Turkey remained the largest exporter of gray and white cement, and Vietnam became the largest exporter of clinker, while Japan remained the largest exporter of slag. In the first quarter of this year, exworks prices are expected to witness in almost all markets an increase, with the Mediterranean basin and Eastern Europe and seas regions witnessing the biggest increases, attributed to the increasing oil and energy prices aggravated by the geopolitical conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The CW price indices for cementitious products are expected to see varying levels of increase, with white cement forecasted to witness the largest price increases. And lastly, the CW price index for gray cement is expected to see the highest increase in the second quarter of the year in the Eastern Europe and seas and the Mediterranean regions. So now, to finalize, I would like to thank you for your time and your attention, and please do not hesitate to contact us so we can help you. And see you in our next webinar.